certain things that we want to know all the inside secrets about, right? We want to go behind the scenes and know, how did that movie stunt get done, or how did that concert tour get pulled off? But there are a couple of places that we really, really don't want to know what they're up to behind the scenes. One of them is at the hamburger factory, and the other is the funeral home.
We always have an odd one in the crowd.
So it's kind of odd.
Decidedly odd.
Doesn't that strike you as a little bit odd?
No, that doesn't strike me as a little bit odd.
It's the Bob and Sheri Oddcast. The stuff we wouldn't, couldn't, or shouldn't do on the regular show. Now, here's the Oddcast.
So, and I'm sorry that it happened in Philadelphia, because it just feels like the most Philly thing ever. But it was very, I mean, this is true. It sounds like something out of a Will Ferrell movie, but this is true. And it happened at a funeral. And let's go to the local news.
Caught on camera, a family in Philadelphia outraged after a grave mistake at their loved one's burial. Cell phone video shows the unimaginable. Pallbearers were putting down the casket. The platform around the site collapses, sending one of the men tumbling into the grave. Several of them, actually. Family members say they suffered injuries to their legs, hands, and back. Now the family wants an apology from the cemetery for the disruption.
A grave mistake. Did you get that?
It was very clever.
Yes.
I mean, it's horrifying to imagine. The ground was wet, and I guess clearly unstable. Yeah. And all of those pallbearers went into the open grave, and one of them was pinned under the casket and injured. Luckily, no one was badly hurt. But you want to talk about a trauma for the family and the loved ones of that person. Would you ever get past it? Be serious,
I don't know.
guys.
You're in a moment of grief, and then you have something that horrific happen. I mean, it just has to be a double whammy.
Well, we have a listener. We have a listener who works in the funeral business.
Hi, Bob and Sheri team. This is your favorite Southern Illinois mortician, Amanda, and you guys are talking about, on your most recent podcast, the Philadelphia incident where the casket landed on the pallbearers at the cemetery. So, I had to call because this is my jam. So yes, this is horrific. This is one of my worst nightmares as a funeral director. So whenever we have bad conditions at a cemetery, we generally will ask the cemetery for what's called a dummy setup. So that is, they'll take you away from the cemetery, the grave site, just to a safer space, where the ground is not maybe so treacherous or the weather. Anyways, this is on the cemetery and the funeral home. Really, the funeral director should have gone out there and nixed this plan. But these things do happen, and this is, as a funeral director, one of my worst nightmares. And yes, I see not only the cemetery and or funeral home getting a lawsuit over this, because it's now gone viral. It's everywhere. And this is shame. Anyways, love you guys. Bye.
Do you see what I mean about how this is one of those industries where you really don't want to go behind the scenes?
No. See, what's funny? In everything else in life, you have like a rehearsal. You have a dry run, like a wedding, right? You've got a dry run for the wedding, right? Yeah. But you don't have a dry run for this. I think that's what she was talking about, the dummy setup or something. I think somebody was supposed to at least sort of check things out.
Well, and everybody involved are just people, and people make mistakes and miscalculations. And unfortunately, then something terrible can happen. Most of us, when we make a mistake at work, it doesn't end up on the news, right? Like, these are just people making mistakes. So I was thinking about, after that news story broke and Amanda called, I was thinking about how this is because we're squeamish about death, especially in American culture. This is something where we don't really ask questions because we don't really want the answers to those questions. Yeah. And so I did a little bit of a dive. I went behind the scenes in the funeral industry. And, well, I'm just not going to tell you everything I learned, because you'll be in the fetal position screaming. But I am going to tell you one thing. It's going to save you some money and some heartache. All right, I don't love this, okay? Like, I don't love this. But as someone who has had to make final decisions for family members, has been part of picking out coffins and caskets and grave liners and all of that, I have learned something that I'm going to share. And honestly, I think that the funeral industry would like you to know this. So I don't feel like I'm spilling something that you're not supposed to know. So when you go into the funeral home, if the person you love has not done the advanced planning, like unlike say my mom, who has not only picked everything out but has paid for it, and the only thing left now is her. Okay, like she is really organized, and most people aren't. Do you? Your parents were, Max, but most people, right, do not think about this. We don't like to think about this.
No, they prepaid.
So you go in,
They prepaid
Yeah.
for theirs.
Your parents were like my mom. They had it together. So you go to the funeral home and you have so many decisions to make. You've got to choose a casket and you have to choose a vault, and everything is, expensive, and you're grieving, and this is your meemaw or your daddy, and my goodness, the last thing you want to do is cut corners or in any way be cheap or take a shortcut, right? But here's the thing. Some of the caskets that they try to sell us have these vacuum sealed rubber gaskets, and they sell them on the grounds that these will protect your loved one, and they're resistant to the outside elements getting in. And in your imagination, you're picturing rain and snow, right? But what they're really talking about those outside elements are the very natural processes of decomposition. And so when you have those sealed caskets, what happens inside that sealed environment is far worse. And I'm not, even though this is the Oddcast, I'm not going to even describe it to you, because whatever you're imagining, it's actually a little bit worse than that. What happens inside that casket is worse than any natural process of decomposition. And that is the person you love, they're not in there. That is just the skin suit. Their soul is elsewhere. But I promise you, you would rather they weren't in a sealed environment. And so would the people in the funeral business, because sometimes with those sealed caskets, they get a situation called exploding casket syndrome, where the gas builds up inside, and can literally blow the lid off the casket or the doors off of a crypt. Okay.
Wow.
All right. So you're spending all this extra money to protect daddy, not realizing what is going to actually happen. So after we had a few of these horrific exploding casket incidents, manufacturers said, we need to do like a Tupperware style burping situation here. We need to build something in so that we can release these gases before they build up. But insiders in the business say, look, very often after the family leaves, we unseal the casket so that this never, ever happens. So you don't need to be paying extra. I promise you don't want it. You don't want me to tell you about it, and you don't want it happening to anybody that you care about. So don't spend the extra money on that sealed box. All right, Lamar, feel free to jump in right here if you're able to speak.
Well, my mom, she was a lot like Max's mom and dad. I mean, she planned everything. In fact, when my father died, me and Troy went with her to get the casket. And I can see her. Oh my gosh, I can see her now. We're going through there, and before we get to the caskets, she goes and she gets the price tags out of the casket, so we don't look at the price tag. And so, because she didn't want us to pick out a casket based on the price tag. But she also said, don't spend the money on the casket. You spend the money on the vault. casket means nothing. The vault, that's where you spend your money. And the the funeral home guy was saying, he's nodding his head. Of course, they always nod in their head. They're always opening the door, nodding their head, being, they're all just
They're
really,
just the kindest people.
They really are. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. But so that's always stuck with me. She goes, don't spend the money on the casket, spend the money on the vault. So I'm assuming if you don't, what you're talking about happening only happens from inside the casket. As long as the casket can breathe, you're okay with the vault, correct?
Well, I mean, I'm a person who does not. I really find the process of embalming people and putting makeup on them and then sealing them up in multiple boxes and vaults and dropping them into the ground, that feels like so terrible to me. I'm not a fan of that at all. And, we don't really, cemeteries take up a lot of space and it's not a great use of, I'm like just not a fan of this in any way. And I anything that delays and slows the natural process of ashes to ashes, dust to dust, is uncomfortable. I mean, now the chemicals that we use are safer than what we used to use. So back when embalming first became a thing during the Civil War, because there was so much death in America, and people were frantic to bring their loved ones home, so they had to figure out a way of safely transporting those loved ones. And if you want to hear the scariest story ever, the story of what happened to Abraham Lincoln's body, we have it in a True Weird Stuff episode, is not for the meek, okay?
No.
But what happened, Lamar, with in the early days of embalming, the chemical that they used was arsenic, and they used so much of it. In fact, in another True Weird episode called Real Stiff, they were able to identify the body of Elmer McCurdy, who had been mistaken for a funhouse dummy. They didn't realize he was a real human corpse. Part of how they were able to identify him was by the strength of and the composition of arsenic in his tissues. So what's happened, there are a lot of places, especially in the East and Southeast, where arsenic has leached into the groundwater from the Civil War graves. So not to be like weird and gross, although what other way can I be? This, like, I'm just not a super big fan of having, like, of doing this to treating our dead this way. Like, there are other ways, and maybe better ways, definitely, for sure, than allowing for all of this land use and all of these chemicals. But here's another little behind the scenes about the funeral industry. So when the embalmers do their work, the formaldehyde they use, I did not know this, tell me if you did, has like a dye in it that has like a rosy tint to restore the color to the flesh. Did you know about that? That the formaldehyde has a dye in it?
I didn't know that.
I didn't.
I didn't know that.
But in addition to that, in the visitation rooms where you'll go and pay your respects, the light bulbs are often also rose tinted to help amplify that effect. Did not know that.
Wow.
That's interesting, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. It
Well,
is.
but it's marketing, but I also think like, oh, are there creepy funeral people? You betcha. I mean, I could sit here and blow your mind with some of the horrific things that have happened in the funeral industry. We've seen a lot, have we not, Max?
Oh, yes.
Like everything from stealing body parts to making the bodies your girlfriend. Like, it is really bad. Okay. There are terrible people who do terrible things. But for me, overall, the mortuary industry is a caretaking industry. And everyone I've ever met who works in it has like a calling of service. Like, they're there to comfort the grieving and walk you through this surreal and terrible experience. Like, they're really good people. So when I think about rosy light bulbs in the visitation rooms, to me, that's one more way that they want to make sure that you have as good of an experience saying goodbye
Yep.
as you can, and that this person looks to you the way they are supposed to look to you. So you could say, well, that's, deceptive, but it feels like care, doesn't it?
Yeah, I
It
think
does,
so.
yeah.
Yeah.
This speaks to what when my grandmother passed away. I remember she really looked very pink to me. That was the one thing that I remembered about that. So when you say that, I go, okay, that makes sense.
That makes sense. Now, this next one, I never gave it a minute's thought, but it's fascinating. Here we go. So, if you have replacement medical parts, like one of those titanium hip replacements, or like, I don't know, all the things people can get new body parts for, knees, hips, what else can you get?
Yeah.
I guess you can
Yeah.
get like titanium
Everything.
stuff in your spine.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can ask if you have your family member cremated, right? You can ask the funeral director to give you back those parts. I don't know many people who do.
Ooh.
Would it even occur to you? Because I'm going to tell you
No,
where
I
they go if you don't get them back.
I wouldn't even thought about it.
So you've got those parts, and you go to the doctor and go, look, I need a knee replacement, but I'm bringing my own.
Yeah.
It used to be Uncle Harry's.
If you have a medical replacement part and you ask for it back after cremation, they'll give it to you. But if you don't ask for it back, and most people don't, those are often, like especially hip and knee implants, are often melted down and recycled and made into like road signs and car parts and other things. How's that for something you didn't know when you got up
I'm
today?
sorry, that's pretty random. Road signs or car
signs,
parts?
yeah.
Didn't you think they'd be making, I don't know, new replacement parts with them?
Whatever I thought, I didn't like, that's a really nice new yield sign. I wonder if that was made with recycled hip replacements. No, I never thought that in a gazillion years. Something else I read while I was doing my dive into the mortuary business is that more and more funeral homes are bringing in therapy dogs, which seems pretty
Yeah. That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, pretty magical.
Yeah.
And so there was a whole thing with where funeral directors, I forget if I was on Reddit or where I was, but funeral directors were like, okay, we'll answer your questions, because people do. Some people they would never ask a question because they don't want to hear the answer. And then some people are like, yeah, I've always wondered about. And so they answered a bunch of these kinds of questions, everything from like the people who specialize in makeup. Sometimes they have to zip on over to the drugstore for super glue, for example. Like there are a lot of regular everyday products that get used in the business. So
hey, back to these metal things.
Yeah.
If it goes through the crematorium and you can get the metal back, is a metal, can it be cleaned up?
Melted?
I mean, as far as no, not melted. Can it be clean? If you want, let's just say that you wanted to keep somebody's knee. I don't know why you would, but let's just say you wanted to keep daddy's knee. Okay. Is it damaged beyond being able to be cleaned up and shined up? Because it's stainless steel and it's not going to.
See, I don't know about the melting temperature of like titanium or any of that. They did say, all right, I'll tell you this. They did say that the one implant they can't give you back are breast implants because they usually explode and melt.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Which,
I'm sure.
Who's surprised by that? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Who's surprised by that?
Yeah.
So were you wanting to get like Lamar? Were you wanting to get the knee implant cleaned and shined up as a paperweight, or to use it for yourself?
I don't know. It would be odd, but I just wondered. I wouldn't want a piece of rusted out, messed up. I mean, I don't know. If I kept it, if I had it from somebody, I would want it to be shiny and new looking, wouldn't you?
Well,
I just don't know.
I was watching Josh Gates on Expedition Unknown, and he found some coins that were fused together at a shipwreck, and it took them to a special place that was able to soak all of that off. So maybe some place like that could restore your.
Yeah.
I cannot believe we're even having this conversation.
Can you imagine
Does
calling
anybody
them up?
out there know how to clean up the knee implant?
Can you imagine calling up the place? Yeah, I've got a job for you. I've got some body parts that have been through like a cremation process. Can you clean that up?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I was just thinking. And I'm sure there's somebody listening to this was thinking the same thing. So I'm asking that question for them.
Yep. It's a good question.
All of my roaming around led me to a place called the Frank E. Campbell Funeral Home in New York. This is the funeral home for like the rich and the famous. I'm talking John Lennon, Biggie Smalls, Heath Ledger, Joan Rivers, Walter Cronkite, everything, Jackie O. Okay. So this is the funeral home to the stars. Do you want to know more?
Yes.
The services are really, really expensive, and everything it's whatever you want. Whatever you want to spend, they will try to make it happen for you. Like for example, when Jackie Onassis passed away, they did not send like a hearse or an ambulance or anything to her apartment because they didn't want looky-loos and they did not want photographs to hit the press. Instead, the Campbell team went to her apartment and did everything there in her apartment. They set up like a remote embalming situation, and she was taken out of her apartment building, in a casket. That's an example of like money is no object if you can pay for it.
Super service.
Right?
Super service. Yeah.
So when the guitarist Les Paul died, they arranged to have his tour bus parked outside the funeral home, and mourners could pay their respects there as well as inside the funeral home. And then there was this one, they didn't say who this was for, but they created like a Bungalow 8, which is like some hotel like in Beverly Hills. It's a famous thing. They recreated that with palm trees and a DJ. This guy, they wouldn't release his name, but they said he was an infamous party boy. And they recreated this Bungalow 8. They had the DJ, they had an open bar. It was like a party. And they buried him wearing a Snoopy t-shirt and his favorite bright green sneakers with a bottle of absinthe in his hand. And the family had asked if the bathroom that their guests would have access to had marble countertops. And the people said, well, yeah, of everything, the best of everything. And one of the employees at the funeral home said, my fears were confirmed when I saw guests coming out of that bathroom with red noses.
That's what you were going to say. I knew it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they have all sorts of stories to tell about some of the like craziest requests that have been made. Like, so for example, a socialite passed away and the woman had been brought to Campbell for her care and services, right? So she's in the embalming room and the phone call comes in and the employee answers the phone and it's the it's the son of the woman, the socialite. Okay. You following me?
Okay.
Yeah.
And he says, I have a favor to ask. Can you tell me if my mother's brain is in her head? And so that was an unusual thing. So the employee went and got the autopsy report. And sure enough, there was the brain. So she goes back to the phone and she said, yes, I have the autopsy report right here. And it says that your mother's brain. And the guy interrupts her and says, no, I don't mean the autopsy report. I need you to go to the room and physically look at my mother's brain. Wait. What? So the employee goes to the embalming room and pulls out the file, and this socialite is Sonny von Bülow, whose husband Klaus had been tried twice for her attempt at murder and had fled the country. Remember this story?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So listen to you're not going to believe. You're not going to believe. So the employee says to the embalmer, I have her son holding on the phone. He insists that I physically see her brain for myself. So the embalmer said, well, I'm going to have to cut open her skull. And the employee was like, ah. So she said, I braced myself. And inside Sonny von Bülow's skull were balled up pieces of paper towel. And the embalmer said, don't panic. Although, can I just say, if I'm looking inside your skull and it's a fistful of balled up bounty, I'm panicking. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
The embalmer said, no. It might be in her stomach because sometimes after an autopsy, they just take all the organs and they stick them in the bag and they sew it up in the stomach. That's just what happens. The bag was there, but Sonny von Bülow's brain wasn't. And she had to go back upstairs and tell this woman's son, your mother's brain is not here. And I will have to, I don't even know. Now, I know you're wondering, where is Sonny's brain? Where's the end of this story? The funeral home never, ever got the rest of the story.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So this is just one of those businesses where, what's the lyric from the song? The Sheryl Crow song, Lie to Me, I Promise I'll Believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is one where you just have to trust that the people that are taking care of you and your loved one are taking care of you and your loved one. Because I can't think of very many people that I know in my life that want to know what really is happening behind the scenes and what really can happen behind the scenes. And Max, in all of our travels through the weirdest rabbit holes and the strangest crimes, did you know this about Sonny von Bülow?
No, I did not.
No.
I'd never heard this before. And I followed that pretty closely when all that was happening.
Lamar, why would the son even think to ask about that?
I know. See, it being gone is one thing, but him asking to verify that it was there.
What does that, now that is going to be one of those things that just kicked off a mystery for me. Just kicked off a mystery, and I'm not going to be cool until I know what it is. So, the next time you find yourself at a funeral home, look at the people that are trying so hard to usher you through this painful life experience. 99% of them are so good. And the other 1% took Sonny von Bülow's brain, but we're never going to know.
Well, I'm getting cremated, so
Me
Carl
too.
and I both are. Yeah,
Me too. And when we say to you, the Oddcast is everything we didn't, wouldn't, couldn't, and probably shouldn't do on the show, today will be a fine example.
Yeah, it really would.
And we sure do appreciate you listening. And we want to thank the official staff mortician, Amanda, who keeps us plugged in
Yes.
on the latest. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next Oddcast.